Did you know Van Gogh's family censored a letter for over 150 years because it destroyed the legend of the mad genius? Vincent van Gogh wrote 900 letters to his brother Theo, but there's one from August 18, 1877, that his sister-in-law Johanna van Gogh-Bonger kept in the shadows. In this letter, Vincent mentions with absolute calm the grave of his dead brother, another Vincent who was born a year before him and died at birth. For decades, psychologists built the childhood trauma theory that Vincent lived tormented by being the replacement for an idealized brother. But when they finally analyzed this letter, they discovered something disturbing. Vincent talks about the grave without any emotional distress, as if it were completely normal. This absence of trauma destroyed the romantic narrative of the artist tortured from birth that had sold millions of paintings. Johanna, who dedicated her life to building Van Gogh's myth, knew this letter humanized Vincent too much, made him less mysterious, less marketable. The uncomfortable truth is that Van Gogh's suffering didn't have a simple poetic explanation, but was more chaotic and clinical than the art world wanted to admit. Do you think censoring this letter protected his legacy or robbed us of an essential part of who Vincent really was?